Sophia was glad to have found a job with such a high salary. She couldn't even hope that her work could be so well paid. She felt like she wouldn't be accepted for this position. The deputy director, who was checking her professional qualifications, looked at her strangely. She understood that he didn't like something about her, and more specifically, he didn't like it at all. Looking at the elegantly dressed women she saw here, she understood the deputy director. Sophia saw and felt that he really wanted to say no to her, but after studying her work history in her employment record, he was surprised. 12 years in one place, and for such a pittance. Why do you, Madam Sophia, undervalue your work? Your knowledge, your education so much? It's not me who undervalues, it's the state that values, Sophia replied, sadly smiling. After college, she couldn't find a job anywhere without work experience, except in a state organization. Then the children were born, they don't want to hire someone with little children. So the circumstances unfolded, and I had to work in a kindergarten, and then couldn't find a decently paying job. Well, we're not the state, so we value professionalism decently, said the deputy director importantly. Honestly, externally you don't fit into the team, but it's almost the end of the year, and this position has been vacant for a month already. Unfortunately, there are few professionals, so I'm giving you a chance with a 1-month probationary period. The probationary period is paid at the appointed salary, so it all depends on you. I hope that by the end of the year you will fill in the gaps in the accounting, and the year-end report will be ready on time. And as for appearance, I think that receiving a decent salary, you will find your style, and your appearance will correspond to the position you hold. Sophia walked down the street and smiled to herself. There were only positive thoughts in her head. She will try her best, but she will keep this job. It's November now, and there's very little time left until the end of the year. But she decided that she would work day and night, but the annual report would be ready on time. Sophia was glad that she would be able to buy gifts for her family by New Year's, the ones they had been dreaming of, but didn't dare to ask for, knowing that it wasn't affordable for her. Sophia didn't tell her family about the big salary. She wanted the gifts to be an unexpected surprise, and her children especially would be happy about it. Sophia was raising her daughter, son, and 2 of her own sisters. And it happened like this. Sophia didn't know her father, there was a stepfather from whom her sisters were born. When her mom got seriously ill, the stepfather didn't want to live with the sick wife and divorced her. After a long illness, mom died, and Sophia took guardianship of her 2 underage sisters. 2-year-old daughter Maria, 3-month-old son Mikhail, Tatiana, 10 years old, and Catherine, 12 years old. With such a sudden, heavy burden, all this fell on the shoulders of a young family. The sisters' ages were challenging, and there was the stress of losing their mother. Sophia's husband turned out to be a weak person, unable to bear responsibility for his children, let alone for his wife's sisters, and filed for divorce. Sophia found herself alone with the difficulties, but she tried to make everyone become one family. She patiently tolerated the teenage antics of her sisters and triumphed in such a difficult period in their shared life. Sophia's family rallied around her. The sisters grew up and understood how difficult it was for Sophia both morally and materially, so they tried to help her in everyday life and willingly looked after her little children. Thanks to Sophia's patience, everything in the family worked out. The older girls would soon finish school one after another, and they would need to enter universities to get an education and a profession. Sophia didn't have the means for that, she was already denying herself everything to make ends meet. Therefore, the young woman had no time for fancy clothes, and when she came for a job interview, she wore worn-out shoes, her mom's old coat, and a well-used scarf. She didn't even have money for a cheap modern outfit. Sophia came to work in the same worn-out shoes and reasonably decent skirt and blouse. In the office where her workplace was, there were 4 other women. Sophia smiled, introduced herself, and saw puzzlement in the eyes of her coworkers. She immediately understood that her appearance, and therefore Sophia herself, were not perceived by them. Through gritted teeth, they said hello and immersed themselves in their work. Sophia was unpleasantly surprised by the reaction of the office workers, but she had no time for building relationships now. She needed to catch up on the work for the past month and get into the right groove, so she immersed herself in the numbers. After quickly grabbing a snack at the cafe across from the office and not waiting for the end of the break, she hurried back to her workplace. She didn't have time to relax now. The door to the office was open, and she was stopped by the conversation and laughter of the employees at the door. They hired such a cheap person to work. We've never had such a scarecrow before, said one of the women. It seems like management has something wrong with their vision. They don't see who they're hiring. It's not enough to say she's cheap. She's some kind of rag from the dump, added another, and they all laughed. How did such a rag dare to cross the threshold of our company? Just one word: cheap. Sophia didn't want to listen to such flattery about her and entered the office. She felt unpleasant and disgusted, but she needed this job, so she silently got to work. In the evening after work, she went to the store, bought herself some shoes at low prices, not leather, Sophia thought, but at least not worn out. Maybe they won't tear until the end of winter. The next day, wearing her new shoes, she heard open laughter from one of her colleagues, who asked, pointing to her shoes, "Where can you buy such cheap stuff? It's terrible." Well, you have to respect yourself a little bit and not wear any trash, and also spare the feelings of others. It's impossible to look at this. She looked disdainfully in Sophia's direction. Sophia wanted to remain silent, but then she thought that if she didn't stand up now, these humiliations would continue. You'll have to look at me as I am. I can't help you with that anymore. All complaints should go to management, they hired me. You know, I also find it unpleasant to look at your manicure, resembling bird claws, Sophia addressed the one who criticized her shoes. So what to do? And I think if we irritate each other like this, then maybe we should not look at each other but focus on our work. In my opinion, that's why we're here, not to discuss appearance. Everyone fell silent. No one expected to be confronted by this cheap woman, so they silently got back to work. Mrs. Sophia completed the annual report on time, for which she received a significant bonus in addition to her salary. Celebrating her success and the money she had earned, Sophia arranged to meet her family after work. Today she would surprise her children and sisters with gifts, because she could finally buy them what they had been dreaming of. Sophia's colleagues were surprised when, leaving the office, they saw Sophia's children and sisters rushing to her with hugs and kisses. They exchanged puzzled glances, but curiosity overcame their pride, and the next day, they finally approached Sophia. "Mrs. Sophia, are all these your children?" one of them asked. "2 of them are my children, and 2 are my sisters, whom I have been raising since our mother passed away," Sophia replied, shrugging. Everyone fell silent. They felt ashamed of their contempt and mockery towards Sophia. One of the women spoke up, "Please forgive us, Mrs. Sophia, we didn't know your situation. I hold no grudge. But circumstances in life can be different for each person, and sometimes much worse than mine. So, should we judge a person by their clothes and call them cheap if they're not dressed as we like?" Sophia's question hung in the air. Everyone was preparing for the corporate New Year's party. Sophia wasn't planning to attend, but it turned out that attendance was mandatory. She had to buy suede shoes, a purchase she hadn't treated herself to in a long time. But she decided to give herself this New Year's gift. These shoes matched her mother's burgundy velvet dress perfectly. The dress was slightly oversized, but the fabric flowed so elegantly, which turned out to be the designer's intention. Sophia adorned the dress with a small golden brooch with pearls, and she and her sister styled Sophia's long hair into crowns around her neat head. "Sophia, you're such a beauty," exclaimed her sisters. "Mommy's a beauty, mommy's a beauty," her children jumped around. At the party, Mrs. Sophia charmed many men. She didn't miss a single dance, and there was no shortage of gentlemen to accompany her. Especially the deputy director, once offended by Sophia's appearance, was astonished by the transformation of his employee. What attracted most about Sophia was her unassuming beauty, modesty, and the absence of that affectedness and artificiality in her movements. Arrogance, which often repels people. When choosing the queen of the ball, almost all the men voted for Sophia. The women in her department were surprised by the men's choice, but they had no choice but to accept it and continue to enjoy the holiday. The deputy director escorted Sophia home. On the way, he learned about Sophia's family and gained even more respect for this small but strong woman, the main and sole breadwinner in her large family.